What up, YouTube? This is Steven, and welcome back to another video. In this video, I want to talk about something that I think oftentimes isn't really addressed, right? At least not between men. Usually this is addressed between like women, black women, light-skinned and dark-skinned black women. This is usually addressed. But I'm going to take it to a different place this time around. And the question that I'm posing here is, do you think that there is animosity or jealousy between light-skinned black men and dark-skinned black men? Okay. Let me start with the light-skinned men first, and how I personally view light-skinned men in terms of animosity and jealousy. I think ultimately, as far as a collective is concerned, I don't think that light-skinned men really have any animosity or jealousy towards dark-skinned men. You know, dark-skinned men do have like more media promotion, more promotion in the media than, light-skinned men. As well, they are the face of black men. As well, within the community, dark-skinned men are put on a pedestal, and as well, more or less highly sought after by women, are highly desired by women, I should say. But despite that, I really don't think that light-skinned men have, animosity or jealousy towards dark-skinned men. I think that overall they have been supportive. They haven't been like, oh, you guys are getting too much shine. I don't think I've ever heard something like that, or like, a light-skinned dude being like, these dark-skinned dudes, they just, just everywhere, just taking over, just erasing us. I don't really think so. As well, I don't think a lot of light-skinned dudes really be putting out like memes about dark-skinned men, like, oh, this dark-skinned dude, like, look at him, like, and having like a meme about him. No, And I guess part of the reason why I think that is because I think, light-skinned dudes kind of be winning in their own way, kind of like, as far as like media promotion, like while dark-skinned dudes do get more media promotion, like light-skinned dudes do have, they are in the media, so, that's part of it. Like, as well, you can see like light-skinned dudes in sports as well. As well, as far as dating is concerned, yeah, like dark-skinned men within the community are preferred. The handsome standard, as I mentioned before, is, kind of like stacked against us a little bit, but we still manage. So we don't really have, ultimately, I guess we don't really have much of a reason to have any animosity as a collective towards dark-skinned black men. I really don't think so. I think light-skinned dudes have been pretty good sports. We've been supportive. We haven't been like, oh, I'm not gonna see that movie because they don't have a light-skinned dude in it. They only have a dark-skinned dude in it. No, I don't. No. And I think that's part of the reason why I think that maybe the relationships between dark-skinned men and light-skinned men are a little better than the relationship between dark-skinned women and light-skinned women. That's part of the reason. There's, of course, it's a nuanced situation. There's a lot that goes into that. I know. All right. And also, I've never heard of like a group of light-skinned dudes or like light-skinned dudes having animosity to the point of violence. There are some YouTube users on here, a couple of them, we have talked about, dark skinned dudes like either like chasing them and trying to attack them, or either like pulling a knife on them, like some type of a threat of violence, just because of being light skinned, even mentioning it, like, I hate you light skinned ends. You know what I'm saying? Or something like that. um, and I can't really think of a story where it's like a light skinned dude really felt that way about a dark skinned man. Really, I think we've been pretty good sports and been really supportive as a collective. It's like, hey, you representing us, keep it up, do a good job. You're doing a good job representing us as a whole. Thanks a lot. You know, keep it up. You're right. You know. As far as dark skinned men having animosity towards lighter skinned men, I do think there might be a bit of, at least a little bit of validity in that. Um, and I think, let's see. Well, we can start with the whole light skinned dude memes. That's something like, where did that come from? You know, I don't like, and I think like, while light skinned women get memes made about them, I think the light skinned dude memes are like, they really seem to kind of like, you know, kind of like go in and try to kind of like cut a little bit, while the light skinned women memes are more like, oh, she thinks she better than everybody. She bougie, while the light skinned dude memes are like, oh, he weak, you know, um, emasculated, etc. The stereotypes, right? So I'm thinking like, well, if everything's all cool and good in the hood, then why would you be making those type of memes and passing them around, right? And that's something, right? Also, as I mentioned, acts of violence. A lot of times when we talk about colorism, it usually is the darker skinned person seeming to be the aggressor, light skinned women have their stories about that as well. Usually, I don't hear about light skinned people being the aggressors when we talk about colorism. Um, but really, the by the way and how the way, well, because of the way that society, I guess, is set up, like, what reason would a light skinned person have to be the aggressor towards a dark skinned person other than just to be evil, right? Like, I think on the other hand, darker skinned people may have more of a reason and animosity that is fueled by something that is legitimate. Like, oh, this person is getting better treatment than me, perhaps, or like, oh, this person is getting, perhaps has an easier time in society than I do, because of the way that they look. And we are both a part of the same group, but we're not treated the same. And there could be some animosity towards that. And I am not one to, deny like privileges, like in this case, I guess light skin privilege. I wouldn't be the person to deny that. There are some light skinned people who do deny that and be like, I'm not privileged. I went through X, Y, and Z. I had to go through A, B, and C. And that can be so annoying and even triggering to hear a privileged person, a light skinned person complaining about how they're not privileged and arguing about that. It's like kind of like how white people do, you know. You don't want to hear no white person saying they ain't privileged when good and damn well they have a much easier time in society than you do, right? And you're like, at the very least you can admit it, at the very least you can just own up to it and admit it. And again, privilege doesn't mean that your life is perfect. It doesn't. That, you know, A rich person is privileged. Their life is not perfect. An able-bodied person is privileged. Their life is not perfect because of that. It just means that things are a little more geared in your favor. Things are a little easier for you. You know, I've heard about the metaphor of like, oh, an apple tree, and everyone's trying to get an apple off the apple tree, but some people have ladders that are short, and some people have ladders that are really long. That's where it comes from. Um, the person with the longer ladder has a better chance of getting the apple than the person with the shorter ladder. The person with the shorter ladder perhaps could come up with a plan or scheme to get the apple, but they have to go through a lot more work to get that apple. That's where I'm coming from with it, right? That's the metaphor that I'm using. So to bring it back to topic, it always happens. So many times, one topic leads into the next, right? So violence, yeah. When I hear about violence and colorism, I usually hear about the darker skinned person being the aggressor. But then again, it's like, well, who would you expect to be the aggressor? Why would the light skinned person be the aggressor? The light skinned person doesn't like the darker skinned person doesn't benefit at the lighter skinned person's expense. It's the other way around, you know. So that could be a reason. As well, some people are just obnoxious, to be fair. One way or another, some people are just obnoxious. um, as far as darker skinned men, I don't know. Like for me, I find that really strange that a dark skinned man would even have animosity towards a light skinned dude, a light skinned man, because I feel like, well, you're put on a pedestal within the community. So I don't know, I'm like, where's the animosity coming from with that? Um, and as well, sometimes they're vocal about it. And like, yeah, light skinned dudes are out, dark skinned dudes in. Very vocal about it. And as well, dark skinned dudes get media promotion, more media promotion than lighter skinned dudes. But I do think that there is a kind of like a struggle that darker skinned men go through that they're extremely quiet about and they keep to themselves. Again, because you can't really, I don't even think there's a space for black men or even any men, but especially black men. I don't think there's a space for them to be vulnerable, to really elaborate and to be very candid about how they feel about their experience as a darker skinned person in society and within the community. But I will say, like, sometimes it does shock me that some dark skinned men really do kind of have some issues within the community. It kind of does, just because I guess from where I grew up, I grew up in a majority black neighborhood, and I really didn't see that. You know, I just saw, like, darker skinned men being kind of like desired by women, the black women. And I felt like, oh, okay, everything's all good in the hood, you know. But I think it's deeper than that, though. Um, One theory is, police brutality. Oftentimes, when you see police brutality, it usually is directed towards a darker skinned person, especially darker skinned males. Like if you go through the list of like the men and the teenagers who've been, victims of police brutality and look at the way they look, a lot of them do have like darker skin, you know. And that's not to say that, lighter skinned men don't go through that type of thing, because they do as well. There are some people of all races who go through that. But I think especially when it comes to like darker skinned men, and I think that's because of how darker skinned men are kind of viewed within society as a whole, sort of viewed as maybe, very like aggressive, hyper masculine, perhaps animalistic, violent, thug, things like that. And I think that can sort of weigh on you in a way, you know, which again is like something I never really thought about, you know. Um, you know, and as well, I think when it comes to darker skinned men seem to be kind of like more so, they seem to project onto others more so than darker skinned women. I think darker skinned women seem to internalize colorism and their struggle with it, while darker skinned men seem to externalize colorism and their struggle with it. Um, that's why a lot of times when you see um, or you hear about um, like black men making comments that are derogatory or offensive to black women, you know, particularly darker skinned black women, it's usually coming from a dark skinned man. You know, it's a lot of examples of that in the media, you know, like say Lil Wayne, Kodak Black, Kevin Hart, um, Gilbert Arenas, who else? Malik Smiley. And, you know, those are just the ones I can name off the top of my head. You know, like a lot of times when you see or hear about like a black man going in on dark skinned women, it's usually not a light skinned dude. It's usually not. Even if that light skinned dude does have a preference that is not a dark skinned woman, he wouldn't really do that, I don't think. As a collective, at least. One comment that comes to mind is that came from a light skinned dude about that was derogatory towards dark skinned women was like the whole Young Berg situation that happened a while ago. But even that, I think he wound up specifying and explaining why he said the things that he said. And he said, like, oh, you know, this dark skin, you know, the dark skinned girl in the radio room was making all these light skinned dude jokes. So he wound up just saying what he said. Um, he said that he doesn't really feel that way, I don't think, and that his mom is actually dark skinned. Um, but that's, I guess, one example that I can really think of, you know. You know, on the other hand, while you can see that Chris Brown has a preference towards, you know, light skinned and exotic looking women, I never heard of Chris Brown saying anything derogatory about dark skinned women, right? I guess you can say the same perhaps with Drake, you know, or J. Cole, or uh, Colin Kaepernick, or Jesse Williams, you know. Um, so, yeah, I guess to bring it back to topic again, um, ultimately, for some reason, for some odd, strange reason, I don't know where the animosity comes from, but I do think there's a bit of animosity towards, like, you know, lighter skinned men coming from dark skinned men. I don't know why that is, though. You know, I don't know why. In my own personal experience, I have kind of like experienced that a little bit, you know, a little bit. Again, I don't know why, though. That's the thing. Like, but why? It seems like you got it made in the shade. Am I missing something? Perhaps. Maybe that's the issue. Um, but I still like I was like, you know, even when I was going through it at the time, I never thought about it as like a colorism issue. I just thought about it as like an individual thing. But looking back on it, I'm like, well, maybe it was a colorism issue, perhaps, you know. um, and also one more thing, I guess I can mention. I guess it can go back to that whole like black men being the like dark skinned black men being kind of like the target of violence, you know, overt violent racism, right? Um, there was this police department that used to, I don't know if they still do this or not, but they did target practice, right? You know, this police force did target practice. So they're shooting their guns, right? And the targets that they're shooting at are mug shots, but the mug shots are of black men, particularly dark-skinned black men, right? And I think like because a lot of times like I think lighter-skinned men kind of aren't even sometimes even viewed as black, and even if they are viewed as black, sometimes they don't have the negative stereotypes that are associated with black people. And the same goes with light-skinned women as well, just light-skinned people in general. I think that's the part of it too. So I think ultimately, like animosity could come from the fact that like you kind of seem to have it maybe a little easier. It seems like that's it just seems like that's fair, and there could be animosity towards that, you know. But let me bring this video to a close. I hope I didn't really offend, I hope I didn't offend anyone. I don't mean to offend anyone. All right. I don't have animosity towards dark skinned men. If I go in the room, I see a whole bunch of dark skinned men, I'm not like, like okay, that's cool. That's what's up. It's not. I don't really think it's like anything to be a big deal about. But I think I just need to put that out there, just in case people may misconstrue things and think that I'm like got some issue with a dark skinned dude, or like I was attacked by like a gang of dark skinned dudes and beat up as a kid, or something like, or I had like a dark skinned family member abuse me. No, of course not, right? I think ultimately I've had pretty cool and great experiences interacting with darker skinned men, black men, you know. Um, so yeah, there you have it. Thanks a lot for watching. Adios and goodbye for now.